fellow dorks? It is the Turtle Dork. We are back with a new recap and review. We are in season 3. We are moving along. We are at episode 2. This one is called Dark Wings, Dark Words. Makes a lot of sense now after I watched the episode. Directed also by the director of the first episode, Daniel Menahan. I am the Turtle Dork. TheDiscoDork here. Let's go ahead and get into this. So the episode starts off, basically, I think what we're going to get into why this episode is titled Dark Wings, Dark Words, which is Bran's dream of the three-eyed Raven. We get to see a little reunion. Of course, it's not an actual reunion, but it is in this dream when he is hunting with his bow and arrow. And you see him talking or being talked to by his brothers, Jon Snow and Robb Stark, telling him to breathe and, just trying to talk him through the process of trying to kill this.
To throw back to the season 1.
Yeah, absolutely. When they're in Winterfell. Yeah, that's right. When they're doing the bow and arrow. Mm-hmm. And he misses the three-eyed Raven, and we hear Ned Stark talking out in the winds, and he looks up in the sky and doesn't see anyone there. And then he sees another kid there, and I don't know if he says anything, but then he wakes up. And so we see that he was dreaming. Hodor is there. Osha is there.
Oh, he does. He said you can't hit the three-eyed Raven because it's you.
It's you. That's what he says. That's right. He says you can't kill him. You can't hit him. You can't kill him because the three-eyed Raven is you. Yeah. So we're getting a little bit more information about what the three-eyed Raven is, and we'll get a little bit more when we get more into Bran's story, which is pretty heavily in this episode. But I thought that was an interesting way to open this episode with Bran, because this is technically the first time we've seen him this season. What did you think of that opening?
It's pretty cool because I again had forgotten when Bran's journey. Well, technically his journey started a while ago, but when he meets up with this guy with Jojen? Jojen and his Meera, his sister. I had forgotten when exactly they
came into the story.
Because now we have the group that, because and we'll talk about this later, but Ramsay Bolton is introduced. So I think at some point Osha's not gonna be with that group when they go to see the three-eyed Raven.
Yeah.
Kuma back. Sorry. But yeah, it's interesting to see that. I had forgotten how they actually had come across them. But again, because Bran has been having these visions since season 1.
Season 1, yeah.
But they're starting to become more, I don't want to say more cryptic, but they're starting to become more involved and grow in scope, because now he's not only working, but he's seeing people, he's seeing stuff from the past, and the past and the present and or future are bleeding together, because in that singular vision, he saw the past that when he was in Winterfell with Robb and Jon, and he can hear the voice of his father, but also in that same vision, he sees Jojen, who he hasn't even met yet, physically, and it's interesting because it's a vision that the Jojen in that vision, Jojen is having this vision at the same time as Bran is, because when they meet later in person, he tells him that, well, we saw the Raven together, and he's talking about that one
moment.
Vision.
Yeah. So that's interesting too. So we finally catch up with Theon in a very short scene and gruesome scene. We see that he's tied up and he's starting to be tortured.
So the last time we saw Theon, he was in Winterfell giving this rousing speech, and then he is struck from behind and he's knocked unconscious.
By his own man.
And that was season 2. So now in season 3, we see that he is a captive of the Boltons.
Is it because they don't reveal that yet?
Well, their banner is the strung up. Man, he's hung up. I mean,
gotcha. I didn't pay attention to the banners.
Yeah, banner, the Bolton banner is the guy who's flayed, the flayed man.
That's right.
He's strung up, just like how Theon is strung up in this scene.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because we'll get to the end when we see those that Bolton banner again. And there's a torturous. I don't know why I remember this from the first time, but anything dealing with like fingers and nails and. Yeah, if you've seen the episode, you know what I'm talking about.
Talking about when he jammed the thing.
Stop. Oh, okay. Next point. Jaime and Brienne walking and talking. We get a little bit more from what we saw, like when she killed those 3 guys when they saw the hanging bodies from last season. So we pick back up with Jaime and Brienne. And these are great moments, really, before we start to learn a little bit more about Jaime and a little bit more of his backstory. But to see the dynamic between the two of them, like you were saying, like Jaime is still kind of ribbing Brienne about like her stature, and this time in this scene, they're talking about. Renly a little bit, the fact that was she in love with Renly, and there's some comedic moments again when Jaime is talking about the proclivities of Renly, of him being a gay man and liking men, and Sir Loras, and if the throne was made of. Was made of a bunch of cocks. Yes, that was kind of funny.
The scene is played humorously,
but it's
Jaime's
very
ribbing, but it's also telling of Brienne's affection
towards Renly.
For Renly,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Because she says, she was because she tries to like downplay it or not really acknowledge it. But Jaime understands, like, look, I know you were, you can, and I like the line that he says towards the end of that conversation where he says, you can't help.
He said, I don't blame you or him.
Because you can't help who you love. And that also goes to him as well because of the relationship between him and his sister Cersei.
And what I'm thinking also, like, after he said that, they cut away to another scene. Then we come back to them later on. But when we come back to later on, I can't help but I thought about what he said, and then I'm projecting into like where we are currently in the season and how their relationship has grown. And if Brienne currently in season 7, 8 or whatever, if she has strong feelings for Jaime, or if she will, and if so, that line comes back into play again. You can't help who you love, because if she starts to care for Jaime in that way, then she's caring for somebody who's done some really fucked up shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I find that interesting. I put a button in that when he said that, because I'm gonna try to call back to that when we pick up in season 8 to see where their relationship is, and if that does. Yeah. If there's something comes of that.
I mean, we see a little bit, if I can recall from last year or 2 years ago, whenever season 7 was, I do recall, like, especially talking about a lot of these different reunions, because that's what we were looking forward to, was Jaime and Brienne. Yeah. And I think there is a little bit, I don't want to, not necessarily say affection, but there's something there between the two. And I'm not saying this romantic or intimate, but there's definitely, I think, something there between the two of them.
Because you got to think how much time they spent together, not just hanging out, but going through something. Like,
I think he's the only one that has told Brienne about the true story about the Mad King.
Right. Yeah. Right. So with the amount of time that they spent together, and not just hanging out, but going through things, like when you go through traumatic incidents, or not even true, but when you go through stuff, like heavy stuff with people, in a way, it creates bonds. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like strong bonds, because you went through something with someone else. So automatically you have something that you two can relate to that some other people can't. You know what I'm saying? So and they're from the time they met, it's just been that over and over constantly. So something has to be there between them. And like you said, I don't mean like a romantic involvement, but a kindred spirit type of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Next thing I have is Cersei and Joffrey when they're in his chambers and he's getting fitted, and they're talking about Marjorie.
I don't care like what type of fancy fabrics you have, whether it be with flowers that he does not like or kind of doesn't like. I don't care how you dress it up. A bag of shit is going to be a bag of shit.
Regardless.
Man, this dude in this scene, man, fuck.
I can't stand Joffrey at all.
But I do, because he's talking so reckless to Cersei, but I like the fact that, this is your monster. Like, you created this monster.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And,
absolutely.
And to see her get, like, he can talk to her like nobody else can, and she can't do shit about it.
No, not at all.
I love that.
And I like, because Cersei, I think, is a little bit suspect of the Tyrells and Marjorie in particular.
Oh, yeah.
And
a little bit.
All the way. And just talking to Joffrey, or trying to talk to Joffrey about what he thinks of Marjorie, how he really feels about Marjorie, because he says, like, what do you think of her? And he goes to the whole point about, well, you know, the Tyrells, you know, like, it will be good for our houses to align together.
He's like, it'll be a good political move, basically.
Yeah, and then she's like, no, what do you think of her? And so I like how she, even as a mother, she's trying to figure things out and like, okay, what is this woman's angle? So I like the scene between the two of them. But again, how Joffrey, you were saying, ultimately how he treats Cersei in this scene as well.
What I get from her questioning of what do you think of her is that because Cersei is privy to Marjorie and the game or whatever.
Yeah.
Cersei wants to know, and I guess she has concern that if Joffrey is truly smitten with her, or is he truly like understanding, like, all right, I'm just doing this for the merging of the two houses because it'd be beneficial to the realm and the kingdom.
Yeah.
Or if he's truly smitten with her because she would hate for him to really want to get with her for her, because Cersei knows, I got to get her out of here.
Yeah.
I got to get her out of here. And that's going to be hard if he truly loves her.
Yes, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If he's doing it for the politics, all right, cool, we can manipulate him or whatever. But if he truly loves her, that's just going to be hard. So I need to know, I need to check temp right now and see like where he is, because Cersei's already plotting. And I granted, she ain't thinking, all right, I'm going to blow all these motherfuckers up with wildfire and season, whatever. She's not thinking that far ahead, but she knows, I got to get her out of here. And that's going to prove to be difficult if Joffrey does, in fact, want Marjorie there for her instead of the politics of it.
I want to get to this scene because this is a scene I want to unpack. Sansa, when she meets Lady Olenna and Marjorie.
So this is our first time seeing Lady Olenna, right?
Yeah, so she's the grandmother of Sir Loras and Marjorie. She's pretty much the matriarch of the Tyrell house. And Lady Olenna is a great character as we move along. This introduction of her,
right here she's a great character.
That's what I'm saying. This introduction of her is so good, and you get such an idea of who she is as a character, as a woman, that it's going to make you as an audience member love her throughout these forthcoming seasons. But I love the introduction of her because she feels like a grandmother. She kind of like, just the way she's just like upfront and just like straightforward about everything. The way she talks to Sansa.
You don't get a sense of some subversiveness.
There's no bullshit.
Her conversation. You don't feel like she's working an angle on Sansa. I mean, she pretty much lays out what the point of that conversation is, and I really like that.
Yeah.
And I talk a lot about, seeing these recaps, I talk about a lot about how there's a lot of things from my initial watch that I don't remember or I'm not sure of, or how I felt. I do remember loving that character the first time I saw her in this scene. She's so well written. Just her personality is such a breath of fresh air
for the show. Yeah, absolutely. Because we don't see characters like that.
No, her forthcomingness and her honesty, and like I said, you don't feel like there's some subversiveness with this interaction with Sansa, and that's a huge change of pace from people like Baelish and Varys or Cersei, or people who they say one thing, but they had like the whole question of how do you feel about her, Joffrey? Like Cersei's working an angle with that question, whereas
in this
with Lady Olenna, she's working an angle, but it's not an angle that she's trying to keep Sansa outside of.
No, yeah, she's up front. She's like, look, my granddaughter is going to marry the king. We want to know like
what we getting into.
Yeah, like, is he a gentleman? Like, what? Like, tell me about this guy. Let me know.
And the cool part about it, she's gangster, is that they're not even. Because Sansa says, she tells her feelings. She says Joffrey's a monster, but then she catches herself and says, I didn't mean to say that. Please don't call off the wedding. And the Tyrells are like, oh no, we have no plans to call him off. She's gonna get married.
Yeah.
We even after hearing that he's a monster, they're willing to deal with that for whatever their own objective or agenda is. To get Marjorie to be the queen.
The queen.
And I find that infinitely fascinating. Like I remarked it in the last episode when Marjorie walks through that puddle of shit. Mm-hmm. She's willing to do anything. This right here is basically saying that. Yeah, I'm willing to get with this monster to be the queen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know. I thought that was really interesting conversation.
So this next scene, I've talked about this leading up to this, and I think this is a pivotal scene for Lady Stark. This is the scene, and I've talked about this because every time we refer to season 3, there are a couple of moments that stood out for me. The Red Wedding, Dany when she finally takes over for the Unsullied Army, and this moment when Lady Stark speaks honestly about Jon Snow. And this scene has always stayed with me from the first time I saw it, and even rewatching it again, damn near brought tears to my eyes because we talk a lot about Lady Stark and the relationship that she has with Jon Snow and how she feels as far as this bastard son that Ned Stark has. Of course, like when we also learn who Jon Snow is and the real reason why Ned Stark had to keep this a secret. Yeah. But she tells this story to Talisa about one of her sons having the pox and how she wished for him to die from this, and knowing that that was the wrong sentiment to kind of have.
No. She when she said that when Ned brought Jon home, she looked at this baby, brown eyes with this disdain because this is a reminder of this infidelity. And then she wished that he would die, and that instead he got the pox. Once he came down with the pox, she became regretful of
wishing that death onto this child,
right?
And so she prayed that he would be healed from the pox, and that if the gods would heal him, that she would be a mother to this child, and how that was still difficult for her to do, and she still wasn't able to hold that promise to be a mother to Jon Snow.
Yeah,
and
she feels that everything that's happened to the Starks
is because
up to this point is because she broke her promise.
It's because she broke her promise, and like to see her tell this story, I just thought it was just heartbreaking to hear, and especially like you say, knowing the history now of everything Ned Stark had to do to keep this a secret, even from his own wife, and knowing what ultimately is going to happen to Lady Stark, and that she'll never have that chance to see Jon Snow again and apologize for whatever regrets that she may have. Seeing this scene prior to that, even like me coming to the show late, I knew what was ultimately going to happen in the Red Wedding at the end of the season. As far as like how it played out, I didn't know, but I don't know. Just watching this scene, it hits you in such an emotionally visceral way. I just thought it was just absolutely fantastic. I mean, what'd you think of that moment with Lady Stark telling that story?
It's a great scene. It just reveals that she has a tremendous amount of guilt, because if she's blaming herself for everything that's happened, when you take into account and look at everything, if you break down everything that happened, that's a lot of stuff. It's different than saying like, oh, I got a person killed, or I feel guilty because I let Jaime go, and that's the extent of it. But like, so much stuff has happened, and if she's taking responsibility for all of that, if she's feeling guilty about all of that, that's a huge weight on her. And you see it in that scene. She's wearing it on her face. She's not sugarcoating that shit. She feels terrible, so much so that it's weird. Like, do you think at this moment, I think maybe she does, but do you think at this moment she stopped holding shit against Jon, and because she's regretful of everything because of the guilt? Or do you think so? Or do you think she's conflicted because she feels responsible for it, and on top of that, I still feel some type of way about Jon?
It's hard to say because I think she's always going to feel like Jon Snow is going to be a reminder of her husband's infidelity, or presumed infidelity that she knows of. But I think because of everything that they're dealing with right now with her family, with Bran and Rickon and Arya and Sansa, and like she said, she just feels like all this is happening because of the fact that she couldn't give love to Jon Snow. I don't know. I think she does really feel like, okay, I think I need to
reconcile that shit.
I really do need to or if I get the chance to reconcile this, then especially now her husband is dead, is gone. Like, I feel like she does need to reconcile this, and I think she does feel differently about how she's treated him, because like you said, like she even said that he didn't like Jon Snow didn't ask for this. You know what I'm saying? So it was never on him, you know, as far as like how she treated him. Like, and I think that's the guilt and the regret that she feels. It's just like, I've had this disdain for this kid that he didn't even ask for that. So it's just hard, man. It was a great scene. The Wildlings. So this is when we kind of get introduced a little bit more to the idea of warging. So Mance Rayder, I got the guy's name, Orell. He's a wildling who wargs, and Mance Rayder explains to Jon Snow that, you know, he can see through the eyes of certain animals so that they can kind of see ahead of where they're going. And so Orell is warging, I think, through one of the birds in the sky to kind of see, you know, if the area is clear for them to continue walking. So it's just a little short scene, but I think it's a scene to really kind of introduce what warging is. And again, I think a lot of what's in this episode is to really kind of support Bran and where we're going with him, because we're going to get into the next scene. But just a short scene with that character to introduce that idea.
Is that before the scene with Sam? When I can't go on any further. Oh
yeah, that's right. I don't have that bullet point in there, but we could talk a little bit about that if you wanted to mention Sam.
Well, I mean, you know, it's a real short scene with Sam. It's a pickup from that episode. Well, the moment in that season finale when Sam, when the White Walkers are approaching and the two crows leave him, they get the hell out of there, and they leave Sam. You know, on top of the fact that, you know, Sam is not necessarily as fit as everybody else, and they're making their way back to the wall, and they're tired, so he's tired, but he's also dealing with the fact that, you know, they abandoned him, and on top of the fact that he saw some crazy shit, and almost died like twice, and so he's carrying a lot, and it gets to the point where he's like, "Oh, yo, I quit." And my favorite part of this scene is when what's the commander's name that comes up to him and was like,
Mormont.
Mormont comes up to him and is like, "Yo, I forbid you to die." Like, that's some badass shit to say. Like, when I was in the service, like, if my drill sergeant or my sergeant came up to me when I was sucking and I was he said that to me, "Yo, I forbid you to die." It's really, Roger Sergeant, I'd have got up and got my shit. That was a gangster shit to say. But anyway, I like that scene. And, you know, you think about, because at this moment, like, Sam is still, firstly, there's this guy who's so antagonistic to him, but he, understandably, he's angry that this happens off camera, but a bunch of the Night's Watch were killed by the White Walkers while Sam was hiding, and obviously he feels some type of way about that. His brothers, he lost some brothers in combat, and Sam was not there. So he doesn't like Sam. He doesn't want him there. He feels like he's slowing everyone down, and fine, just let him stay here and die, because we can move faster without him. And then Mormont tells him, well, all right, since you keep fucking with him, you're in charge of him, and if he dies, you die. And so, which I kind of like that, just to get him to shut up, but it doesn't help Sam, because now the dude's super pissed off at him.
I know.
But you see, Sam's an interesting character too when we talk about trajectories and, you know, where one person started and where we are now in season 7 going into 8. And he's someone, because you got to think, like, right now, he's still so wet behind the ears, because he hasn't even gone to the Citadel yet, where he's going to get time to learn and train for maestering. Sam's going to he's gonna
kill a White Walker.
Kill a White Walker.
Yeah.
He's gonna be integral into the Dragon Glass being introduced to everyone else, and also the Valyrian Steel later on.
The Valyrian Steel, yeah.
And so, and also how his
relationship with Gilly,
and so he's, and we're in season 3, but in such a short period of time, because from now to 7, like all these things are going to happen, and they play such a huge part in the rest of the story. And so I think that was the main takeaway from this watch. Okay. Watching him in this scene at one of his lowest points, like he was ready to give up and die north of the Wall. And had he stayed there, all these things these great things that this character was going to do wouldn't have happened. And so, when Mormont tells him, "I forbid you to die," it makes him stand up, and it allows Sam to go on and do these other things, these great things that are going to help out, I think, and later on.
Yes, he's a really pivotal character, because like without him, we wouldn't have got that information about Jon being a Targaryen when after he became a maester at the Citadel, like going through those books and finding that shit out about the wedding between Rhaegar Targaryen and Ned Stark's sister. So we get introduced to Jojen and Meera Reed when they formally meet Bran. So this is an interesting scene, because we have one of the dire-wolves and Osha. They hear something out in the wilderness, and Osha goes out there to investigate a little bit more. And the dire-wolf Summer is there, and we see Jojen walk up. And at this point, watching it, I thought it was still a dream, but this was actually happening in real life. Yeah. And so we get an introduction of Jojen and Meera, and I just thought that was an interesting scene, especially when you see Summer the direwolf, when he goes from snarling to kind of whimpering a little bit to kind of detect that these are good and innocent people, that Jojen was unarmed and his sister was there.
I thought Meera's introduction was used with a slick piece of dialogue, because Jojen is looking at Bran, and Osha comes up from behind, she puts a spear in his neck, and he says, "I'm unarmed." And then Osha remarks something like, "That's poor planning on your part." And then he says, "But my sister is armed." He said, "My sister carries a weapon or whatever," and she comes up behind Osha with a knife. I thought that was pretty slick.
Yeah, so that was a great scene. And then we're going to get to another scene between Jojen and Bran, where they're talking a little bit more. But before we get there, Arya, we catch back up with Arya, Hot Pie and Gendry. They run into the Brotherhood without banners. They're with the guy Thoros, and so they run into these cats. And I thought it was a really, really interesting scene, because they don't know who these guys are. And we've heard a lot about the Brotherhood of Banners from Tywin and everybody at Harrenhal, because they think this is what's causing, like when his one guard got killed by Jaqen, they're assuming that this was done by the Brotherhood without banners. So we finally get to see who these guys are, and Thoros, who is a great character as well, runs into Arya, and she's of course a little defensive, but they're able to kind of talk them down a little bit. I like the one guy with the bow and arrow, when he shoots it up in the air at Hot Pie. He's like, "Look, when that arrow's going to come down when I start talking, and it's like, you may not want to stand there once I finish talking, and I'm done talking." And then he moves and the arrow comes down. And it's just a great scene to really kind of establish who the Brotherhood, what they are, what they actually stand for, what they're actually fighting for. And so I don't know, I thought that was a really, really great scene between Arya and all of them.
And that scene also just reinforces just how brave Arya is, because she is consistently in the face of fear, because she's afraid, because they hide. She sees them, she's afraid. She consistently, in the face of fear, always takes action. She always takes action. Yeah. Whether it doesn't even have to be fighting, but just exposing herself.
Exactly. Yeah.
When they were leaving Harrenhal and they were unsure of what Jaqen meant about just walk out the door, walk out the front gates. Yep. They're afraid. They're kids. They run the risk of not just being captured but killed. Yeah. Right. And in spite of that fear, she still steps out there. And that just speaks volumes about that character. I love that. I love that about her.
A lot of that. Shay and Tyrion. So let's get into that conversation they have in his chambers about Sansa. So Shay's talking to Tyrion about, look, we need to try to protect her. And so I like this a little bit because it gets into a little bit, and I don't know, like Shay's a little playful with it, but you can see some of her insecurities about Tyrion, like because they talk about Rose. That's the girl, the lady's name, Rose, who's with Baelish, who kind of runs his brothel. He's like, I fucked her once, maybe twice, and then he says something about Sansa being a lovely lady. He's like, and she's like, so. I don't know. It's a little playful, but you can definitely see some of the insecurities that Shay has. But I think it's a really, really good scene as well. Just her really trying to let Tyrion know, like, we need to try to protect her from Baelish. So I like that whole interaction between the two of them. Let's see, Marjorie and Joffrey. When they're in his chambers, when he has the weapon. So he's about to go out on a hunt. And so they're talking a little bit about Renly. And I think goes a little bit back to the conversation Cersei was having with Joffrey about Marjorie. So now maybe Cersei got to Joffrey a little bit because it seems like he's not really questioning Marjorie, but he's just asking her questions, I guess maybe to try to find out a little bit more of her intentions. And he was talking about, okay, Renly, you were going to marry a traitor, but now you're here with me. And you can see Marjorie kind of taking it back a little bit, and she's trying to find, get her footing back as far as like how she wants to respond to Joffrey. But she's able to kind of, get back in good standing with him. But I like the way that whole scene played. But in that moment, Joffrey, man, you just never know when you look at him, like what his intentions are, and like how he's going to play those moments.
I feel like in that scene, I didn't necessarily think that Cersei had gotten to him. I thought his questioning of her was logical, but also the way that he is when he's around her, I feel like he's in a way not necessarily intimidated, but like he's not necessarily. This is a woman. Like he's inexperienced with that. And I don't just mean like sexually, but this is a woman who's very strong-minded, independent,
confident,
and confident. And the biggest takeaway for me in this watch of this particular scene is how Marjorie's demeanor, how she plays this entire scene. Right after the conversation with Sansa and Olenna, when Sansa basically tells her, "Yo, he's a monster," and so she knows. She knows this. And they've already heard stories about Joffrey
as well.
So Sansa was just confirming all these stories. So she knows the type of monster Joffrey is, and she still walks into that room and plays the fucking game with him. And for that particular round, she won. She, like, as far as like staying in his good graces and not and not having suspicions raised, like even when he had doubts, like why were you at the bedside of a traitor? And like you said, she finessed that conversation, and by the end of that scene, they're basically hand in hand, like and Joffrey is still smitten with her, and he I don't know, she's got him in
right where she wants him. Yeah, she got him right where she wants him. Theon, again, we talked about him a little bit, getting tortured, but now he's being tortured and kind of interrogated as far as why he invaded and took over Winterfell. And he's giving answers, and they're torturing him with his feet, still got him chained up and whatnot. And this is also when we get introduced to Ramsay. And I didn't know Ramsay was introduced in season 3, because I know he becomes a main villain in season 5, because that's the Battle of the Bastards between Ramsay and Jon Snow. But I couldn't remember how soon Ramsay was introduced. And what's interesting to me about this, and again, a little bit of spoilers, because I'm gonna talk a little bit ahead, it's kind of like this psychological game that's being played with the Boltons and Theon, because when Ramsay is introduced, at least for me, because I didn't know who the character was, I thought that this guy was there to save him. I was like, oh man, he's going to rescue him, because he says, look, he was posing as like a janitor, like just he's like cleaning up and whatnot. And then when the soldiers leave and they leave him tied up, he says, look, your sister sent me. I'm gonna come back later and I'm gonna rescue you and get you out of here. And there's a moment when he does rescue him and they're about to leave, but he basically has him come back to where he was before. And then we kind of learn who Ramsay is and that he was just playing this game with Theon. So he's playing like these psychological games, and that's going to go into how he becomes Reek and all this other stuff like that. So this is kind of like an introduction to that, and we'll get more into that when those episodes actually come. But I just thought that, man, it just made me think about these psychological games that Ramsay's starting to play with Theon. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, the conversation with Jojen and Bran, like when they're walking. So they're talking about warging. So Hodor is carrying him in the cart, and Jojen says, he's like, you can see through. That's what he was saying, right? He could see through Hodor as he's walking. He's like, only when I'm asleep or something like that.
No. Basically, see through the eyes of Summer. Talking about Summer.
Oh, he's talking about Summer. Okay, yeah. I was mistaken because I thought he was talking about Hodor. Okay, so they were talking a little bit about that. So he was talking about warging and talking about sight and how Jojen can do the same thing as well. Mm-hmm. So they were talking a little bit about the history of their fathers and how Jojen's father helped him in the war. How Jojen's father helped Ned Stark in the rebellion, and how he talked about how Ned Stark told him about the rebellion, but his father never did, but he could see it. So we're getting a little bit more information that Jojen kind of has the same abilities that Bran has. But again, rewatching, thinking about this, I can't help but go to the Hodor episode. That's like a couple of seasons ahead. So we'll get to that, which is a great reveal as far as how Hodor became who he is, because he talks about how he can see into the future, he can see into the past, mm-hmm. And how that can affect the past as well. But yeah, it just made me think of that episode, and I think this is really kind of planting the seeds already for that Hodor episode.
Well, there are several significant instances where Bran looks into the past and has a direct effect on the events during that vision. Okay. And how that informs stuff that happens in the present in the show and then in the future. Yeah. Definitely the Hodor one is a significant one too.
Yeah. So I thought that conversation was really insightful. Okay, so Thoros from the.
Was that pun intended?
A little bit. I'm gonna say it is. Yeah. Thoros. So when they capture the Hound, so they're in like this little tavern. And so they're talking to Arya, and
they want to know how you guys got out of Harrenhal. How
you escaped from Harrenhal? Yeah, because that's not a place that you escape from. And so they're kind of questioning them about this whole thing. And so Arya kind of pulls a sword on them because they're kind of laughing at them, saying because. He says like Gendry was like a smith. He was able to make weapons because he learned it from King's Landing, and I think he says Thor says something to Arya as far as like being a fighter or a warrior or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but then she kind of pulls her sword, and then he pulls his sword, and kind of shows her a little bit of the art of sword play. But then the thing at the sword towards the end of this is when they bring the Hound in, and he's got a bag over his head, and they take the bag off to reveal that it is the Hound. It's Clegane the Hound, and Arya sees Clegane there, and it's like, oh shit. So they try to leave, they try to sneak out, but the Hound sees her, and he's like, well, what are you doing here with one of the Stark girls?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I thought that was an interesting scene, and so we're starting to see the beginnings of the relationship between the Hound and Arya, which is some stuff I would definitely want to start seeing more of, and I'm excited to see more of that as we move along.
Yeah.
This final scene, Jaime and Brienne, when they fight.
Oh yeah.
So let's get into this final scene on the bridge. So yeah, Jaime can he's saying that he's tired, so he's basically he's able to steal the sword from Brienne, and then there's a sword fight between Jaime and Brienne on the bridge. And he basically says, there's a bit of a quandary here. So if you kill me, then you don't fulfill your promise to Lady Stark to get me back to King's Landing. But if you don't kill me, then I'm going to go ahead and kill you.
Yeah.
So there's a bit a fight, a pretty good little sword fight that they have on the bridge, but it's interrupted when some of the Boltons come on the bridge.
Yeah.
And realize that this is the Kingslayer. So they're basically going to go ahead and take Brienne and the Kingslayer as their prisoners, as their hostage.
This is actually Brienne's fault in a roundabout way.
Yeah, it is, because they ran into they ran into somebody in the woods in their previous scene, and Jaime said, "Look, that guy knows who I am." And Brienne is thinking like Jaime is just doing, because the way Jaime has been kind of treating her up to this point, he's like, okay, you're fucking with me. No, I'm not gonna. He's just a regular villager, just passing through. I'm not gonna kill an unarmed innocent person. But it's like, look, like, are you gonna trust your gut, or you gonna do what I say? Because he's talking about the Stark girls as well. Because look, if they capture me, then you're not gonna be able to fulfill this promise to Lady Stark. And we think Brienne may have made the right decision, but that comes back at the end when we learn that this villager does know who Jaime is and went and told the Boltons, and now the Boltons are here to capture him. So and then that's how we end this episode. So another strong episode. Jaime's gonna end up losing his hand. It may be the next episode. I don't know if it's gonna be the next episode or not. But yeah, your man Noah Taylor.
Yeah, yeah. I totally unrecognizable. The first time I saw it, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. I remember that. So yeah, season 3, episode 2, Dark Wings. Dark Words, directed by Daniel Minahan. So we are going to be on to episode 3, getting closer to that moment, man. We're getting up there. Getting closer. The red wedding. Anyway, let us know what you thought of this episode. Go ahead, comment freely in the comments below. Let us know what you thought. Remember to rate, like, subscribe, and share. Remember, check out our other dorks at MouthDork, at WB Dash, at Sidewalk Siren. Check the podcast out at ItModcast. I am the Disco Dork. This is... I did it again.
You motherfucker. You could be the Disco Dork.
No, it's okay. I am the Turtle Dork. This is the Disco Dork. I'm going to get it right at some point. One day, we're out.
Peace.